What happens when America's most compassionate judge suddenly turns ice cold? The young man standing in Providence Municipal Court had no clue he was about to see a side of Judge Frank Caprio that millions of viewers had never imagined. What began as an ordinary traffic hearing was about to erupt into the most startling moment of the judge's career. "Your Honor, I can explain," the defendant began. But Judge Caprio's reply sliced through the air like a blade. "No, you can't." The words crashed into the courtroom like a thunderclap. The very same judge known worldwide for his mercy, the man who had helped thousands, who had drawn tears of relief from countless families, had just given the coldest response of his life on the bench. The young man's face drained of color. The packed courtroom froze in stunned silence. Even the officers traded uneasy glances. No one had ever seen Judge Caprio like this. What nobody realized in that instant was that this exchange would change everything, not just for the defendant but for how America itself thought about justice. The defendant was Marcus Chin, a 22-year-old Brown University student. He had walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom that Tuesday morning with the easy confidence of someone who had seen dozens of viral clips showing the judge's legendary generosity. Marcus had even laughed with his friends, predicting his tickets would vanish after he spun a charming story. But Marcus had overlooked one crucial detail. He didn't know that just days earlier Judge Caprio had buried his 23-year-old nephew, a young man killed by a drunk driver with 17 prior traffic violations that other judges had dismissed or reduced. The loss had cut Caprio deeply. For the first time in decades, America's most merciful judge was questioning whether his trademark compassion was actually shielding reckless behavior. So when Marcus approached the bench that morning, clutching a folder of citations, wearing a slight smirk, he had no idea that smile was about to vanish forever. "Good morning, Your Honor," Marcus said, casually confident. "I'm here about these parking tickets, and I know you're famous for helping students like me." Judge Caprio raised his eyes from the file. Those who knew him best saw something different there. Something sharper. Something unyielding. 17 parking violations in 6 months, he read aloud. Expired registration. No insurance. And you're standing here because you think I'm going to help you. The courtroom was jammed that day. Local TV cameras were rolling for Caught in Providence. Students from nearby colleges had filled the benches, eager to watch the celebrated kind judge in action. No one could have predicted what was about to happen. Marcus shifted uneasily, though he still tried to keep up his confident front. "Well, Your Honor," he began, "I've been working 2 jobs just to cover tuition and money's been really tight. I was hoping you might understand my situation, and maybe work with me on these fines." Judge Caprio leaned forward, his expression hardening in a way that sent an icy wave across the entire courtroom. "Let me get this straight," the judge said slowly. "You're driving without insurance, putting every other driver on the road at risk, and you want me to understand your situation?" The question hung in the room like a dare. Marcus's confidence began to falter. I was planning to get insurance, but what?" Judge Caprio snapped, his tone carrying an edge no one in that courtroom had ever heard from him before. "But you decided the law was optional? That insurance was just something you could skip because money was tight?" What Marcus didn't realize was that Judge Caprio had already reviewed his full driving record before the hearing. And inside that file was something that would transform this seemingly routine case into a courtroom earthquake that people would talk about for years. The judge opened the thick folder and pulled out a document that made his jaw tighten. "Mr. Chin," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "Would you like to explain to this courtroom why you lied to me?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face went pale, then flushed red, then drained pale again. I don't understand, Your Honor." Judge Caprio held up a piece of paper. "This," he said firmly, "is your bank statement. Subpoenaed this morning. You have $47,000 sitting in your checking account. You're not a struggling student, Mr. Chin. You're someone who chose to drive illegally because you thought you could talk your way out of consequences." The courtroom exploded with murmurs. News cameras zoomed in, capturing Marcus's face as the crushing truth hit him. The young man who had strolled in expecting sympathy was instead about to receive a lesson in accountability that would scar him for life. But Judge Caprio wasn't done. What he said next would go down as the single most viral courtroom moment in internet history, viewed more than 100 million times and shared everywhere, from police departments to parenting blogs. "Son," Judge Caprio said, his voice cold as ice and absolutely merciless, "you didn't just lie to me about your financial situation. You lied about something much worse." Marcus was now visibly trembling. Sweat ran down his forehead. The cocky young man, The young man who had walked into the courtroom was fading before everyone's eyes. Judge Caprio pressed on, his voice steady yet cutting. 3 weeks ago you were part of a hit and run. You sideswiped a parked vehicle owned by Maria Rodriguez, a single mother balancing 2 jobs to provide for her 3 children. Instead of stopping, you fled the scene. A sharp gasp swept through the courtroom. Marcus' knees threatened to give way. Your Honor, I can explain. No. Judge Caprio's interruption was swift, surgical. You cannot explain because there is no justification for what you did next. His eyes burned with a righteous fury few had ever seen. After striking Mrs. Rodriguez's car and driving off, do you know what she had to endure? She had to board 3 buses just to reach her second job, because her car was undrivable. She had to forfeit work hours to gather repair quotes. She had to look her children in the eye and tell them why their mother could no longer drive them to school. By now, tears streamed down Marcus' face, but Judge Caprio was unyielding. And while Mrs. Rodriguez was drowning in hardship because of your actions, you sat behind the wheel of a BMW, uninsured, racking up more tickets, and preparing to step into this courtroom thinking you could sweet-talk your way out of accountability. The room fell utterly silent. Even the officers froze. Everyone present sensed they were witnessing something extraordinary. Frank Caprio, known nationwide for compassion, was now wielding justice with uncompromising force. But here's what you failed to anticipate, Mr. Chun. The judge's voice dropped, quiet but lethal. Mrs. Rodriguez works right here in this courthouse as a cleaning lady. She's been watching you on the security cameras from the moment you walked in. And she's sitting directly behind you. Marcus whipped around. There she was, a petite Latina woman in her 40s, her gaze heavy with both sorrow and fragile hope. For 3 long weeks she had waited. 3 weeks of wondering if the man who damaged her car and abandoned responsibility would ever be held accountable. Judge Caprio's tone softened instantly. Mrs. Rodriguez, he said gently, would you please stand and tell this court how Mr. Chun's actions impacted you and your family? Her hands shook as she rose. Her accent colored every word, but her message rang crystal clear. Your Honor, when he struck my car, I wanted to believe it was an accident. But when I watched him look straight at me through his window and then choose to drive away, something inside my heart shattered. Her voice trembled at first, then gained strength. My children asked me why some people think they can hurt others and just leave. I didn't know what to say. I've spent their whole lives teaching them responsibility, teaching them honesty. And then they watch someone smash our car and vanish as if we don't matter. Marcus sat hunched forward, his face buried in his hands, his body heaving with sobs. But Judge Caprio was far from finished. Mr. Chun, the judge said firmly, Mrs. Rodriguez earns $12 an hour cleaning offices. The damage to her car cost $2,847, nearly 6 weeks of her wages. While she struggled to scrape together enough for repairs, you were sitting on $47,000, convincing yourself that obeying the law was optional. Leaning forward, his tone carried the gravity of decades on the bench. This is not about money anymore, son. This is about character. It's about the kind of person you decide to be when you think nobody is watching. What followed would etch itself into legal history, the defining moment of Judge Caprio's career. His ruling that day would be dissected in law schools, analyzed in ethics seminars, and remembered long after his retirement. Closing the thick case file, he locked eyes with Marcus. I've been a judge for over 30 years. I've presided over thousands of cases. I've always believed in second chances. I've built my reputation on compassion and understanding. He paused, letting the silence magnify his words. But compassion without accountability isn't justice. It's enabling. And today, Mr. Chun, you are going to learn the difference. His voice hardened, absolute in authority. Here's what's going to happen. First, you will pay Mrs. Rodriguez $5,000. $2,847 for her car repairs, plus $2,153 for lost wages and the hardship you caused. Marcus, tears streaming, nodded desperately. Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely. Second, Judge Caprio continued, you will serve 30 days in jail. Not suspended, not reduced, 30 actual days. Perhaps then you will understand that actions carry consequences. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Even for Judge Caprio, this sentence was unusually severe for a case like this. Third, Judge Caprio declared, your license is suspended for 1 year. During that time, you will complete 200 hours of volunteer work, assisting Mrs. Rodriguez and other working families with car repairs and maintenance. But the judge wasn't done. What he said next would go on to become the most quoted line from any American courtroom. "And finally, Mr. Chun, you are going to write a letter of apology to Mrs. Rodriguez's 3 children. In that letter, you will explain why their mother had to suffer for 3 weeks because of your selfish choices. And next month, in this very courtroom, you will stand and read that letter aloud, in front of their entire school class." The young man collapsed into sobs, his voice breaking. "Your Honor, please." "Please what?" Judge Caprio snapped, his tone cutting like a whip. "Please let you off easy so you can keep believing the rules don't apply to you? Please enable your selfishness so the next victim doesn't matter either?" The judge rose from his seat, his presence towering over the silent chamber. "Son, I have spent my career helping people who made mistakes and were truly sorry. But you're not sorry for hitting Mrs. Rodriguez's car. You're only sorry that you got caught. And that is precisely why you must face the full weight of your actions." As the bailiff moved to escort Marcus away, Judge Caprio delivered his final words, words that would echo across America, shared millions of times online and remembered as one of the most powerful declarations of justice ever made. "Let this be a lesson to everyone watching," he said, his voice ringing through the courthouse. "Compassion is not weakness. Accountability is not cruelty. True justice demands both. And when someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them." The courtroom erupted in thunderous applause. Mrs. Rodriguez wiped tears from her eyes. She had waited 3 long weeks for someone to care, and now America's most beloved judge had proven that her pain mattered. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, still trembling with sobs, Judge Caprio turned back to the victim. His voice softened, returning to the warmth millions had come to know. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I want you to understand that your dignity and your family's security matter just as much as anyone else's in this courtroom." He reached into his wallet, pulled out several bills and handed them to her. "This is for cab fare home today. You shouldn't have to take buses after everything you've been through. 3 buses after everything you endured." The gesture seemed small, but it symbolized everything that set Judge Caprio apart. The rare ability to be uncompromising toward those who exploit the system, while extending genuine compassion to those harmed by it. But the story didn't end there. What unfolded in the weeks following this explosive courtroom encounter proved that sometimes the harshest lessons spark the deepest transformations. If this story is blowing your mind, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to witness what true justice looks like. And comment below, what would you have done if you were Judge Caprio? 2 weeks later, something completely unexpected happened. Marcus Chin, out on bail while awaiting his jail sentence, appeared on a local news broadcast. But this wasn't the smug young man who had walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom. This was someone changed. "I want everyone to understand, Judge Caprio saved my life," Marcus said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "I was becoming someone I didn't even recognize, someone who thought the rules didn't apply, who could hurt others and just walk away." He paused. The judge stopped that spiral before it was too late. In the 30 days before reporting to jail, Marcus had done something extraordinary. He liquidated $20,000 from his savings to create a fund for single mothers who couldn't afford car repairs. Already he had helped 12 families get their vehicles back on the road, and vowed to continue the program after his release. "Judge Caprio didn't just punish me," Marcus told the interviewer. "He held up a mirror and forced me to see the person I was becoming. And then he gave me the chance to become someone better." Marcus' transformation was so authentic that Mrs. Rodriguez herself wrote a letter to the court, asking Judge Caprio to consider reducing his jail time as recognition of his genuine change of heart. But Judge Caprio's reply to that request shocked everyone, including Mrs. Rodriguez. When the local news crew asked him about her plea for leniency, his answer revealed the wisdom that had made him one of America's most admired judges. "Mrs. Rodriguez's forgiveness shows what a beautiful soul she is," Judge Caprio said. "But Marcus still needs to serve his full sentence, not as punishment anymore but as a reminder. When we face real consequences for our actions, the lesson stays with us for life. If I reduce his sentence now, in 10 years he might forget how serious this truly was." The judge's eyes twinkled with the warmth his millions of fans knew so well. "Besides, Marcus told me he wants to serve the entire sentence. He said it matters to him to finish what he began. That tells me the lesson took root." Judge Caprio was correct. Marcus served his 30 days and came out even more devoted to making amends. During his year-long license suspension, he didn't just complete the 200 required hours of community service. He went far beyond, logging 800 hours, helping dozens of working families keep their cars running. The letter he read to Mrs. Rodriguez's children became a viral sensation of its own, viewed more than 50 million times. In that letter, Marcus didn't simply apologize. He explained how their mother's resilience and dignity had shown him what true character really looks like. "Your mom could have been angry and bitter after what I did," Marcus read aloud to the children and their classmates. "Instead, she worked harder to fix what I broke and still found time to teach you about forgiveness. She's a hero, and I'm thankful she gave me the chance to become a better person." The moment Mrs. Rodriguez embraced Marcus after his reading became one of the most shared clips in internet history, over 200 million views translated into dozens of languages. But perhaps the most powerful moment came a year later, when Marcus returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom for a final hearing to restore his driver's license. "Your Honor," Marcus said, standing in the very spot where he had been humbled and transformed 12 months earlier, "I want to thank you for seeing who I could become, even when I couldn't see it myself." Judge Caprio smiled, the warm-hearted expression that millions around the world recognized. "Marcus, a year ago you entered my courtroom as a young man who thought consequences were for other people. Today you stand here as someone who understands that true strength comes from accepting responsibility for your choices." His voice grew solemn once more. "But I want you to remember something. The reason this worked, the reason you changed, wasn't because I was harsh with you. It's because you chose to let that harshness teach you rather than harden you. That choice was yours. And that's what makes me proud of you." Marcus nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Judge Caprio, I promise you, Mrs. Rodriguez, and this courtroom that I will never forget the lesson you gave me. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure others understand that our actions affect real people, with real families and real struggles." As Marcus walked out of the courtroom that day, Judge Caprio reflected on why this case had grown so meaningful. In a later interview, he explained his philosophy in words that would echo through law schools across America. "People assume compassion means always being gentle," Judge Caprio remarked. "Yet genuine compassion occasionally demands firm love. That young man required someone who cared enough about his future to prevent him from ruining it. If I had simply canceled his tickets and let him go, I would have been allowing him to harm more people like Mrs. Rodriguez." The judge's gaze turned reflective. "The purpose of justice isn't retribution, it's transformation. But real change depends on accountability. One cannot exist without the other." The account of Marcus Chin and Mrs. Rodriguez became more than just a viral clip. It evolved into a lesson used by judges, attorneys, social workers, and parents worldwide to illustrate the line between enabling and empowering, between shallow kindness and firm love. Judge Caprio's stern reply that startled a young defendant ultimately touched millions of hearts, showing that at times, the most caring act is to refuse to let someone continue down a harmful path. This case also cemented Judge Caprio's image as more than a compassionate jurist. He was a wise one. Someone who grasped that authentic justice requires the bravery to be unpopular when circumstances call for it. Years later, Marcus Chen would rise to become a successful lawyer, specializing in aiding victims of hit-and-run crashes. He credited Judge Caprio not only with reshaping his life but with teaching him that true leadership sometimes means choosing the difficult path over the popular one. As for Mrs. Rodriguez, she eventually launched her own car repair assistance project for single mothers. Funded first by Marcus, it expanded into a community-wide effort that helped hundreds of families keep their vehicles safe. The three of them, Judge Caprio, Marcus, and Mrs. Rodriguez, had created something uplifting out of a painful moment, proving that justice, when combined with both firmness and wisdom, has the power to transform everyone it touches. This story became Judge Caprio's most requested speaking example, and he ended every talk with the same lesson: compassion without accountability is enabling. Accountability without compassion is cruelty. True justice demands both. And true leaders are willing to provide both, even when it's difficult. The young defendant who entered Judge Caprio's courtroom expecting easy forgiveness instead received something far more valuable: a judge who cared enough to deliver the tough love required for him to become the person he was destined to be.